Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. Today's video is going to be my preview of the new showcase Beauty in Motion. So it is the last day of the crossover, so make sure you do any summoning you want to do for the Fire Emblem characters today, whether on the Platinums or on the Fire Emblem Lost Hero Showcase. Make sure you finish your Valor grind. But being the last day, we did get a preview of what's to come, and it looks like we're not going to get the old showcase and enchanting ensemble that ran along Resplendent Refrain the first time that event was around. Now we'll have to wait and see. Maybe they'll treat reruns differently, and maybe they will do two simultaneous showcases for the first time, but at least for our preview, all we hear about is Beauty in Motion. We get a new look at the 3 new adventures on this showcase and the brand new dragon. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the trailer preview that was posted last night, and then I'll hop over into game and we'll talk about Zardin and our new light dragon as well. So here we go with the trailer. Dragalia Lost, and our summoning screen, Beauty in Motion. So here are our newly added adventurers. A Star is Born, Beautician Zardin, Light Blade attack type, we already knew that. Ravishing Rainbow. We'll talk about what it does, but just look at that animation. The little images of him that pop up, it's just over the top. Stunning Visage. Makes his normal attacks inflict stun. I think his voice acting is really on point for this too. Yachiyo. Looks like Yachiyo can buff her own strength while dealing damage, and then she has another self buff, Dauntless Spirit, and she's another light blade. Then we get Norwin. Norwin looks like he can deal damage and attack with his first skill and also buff his strength. Then he has another attack. Newly added dragon, Takemikazuchi. Light dragon, light strength of 40%, and light overdrive punisher of 25%. The second time we're seeing that after Simurgh. And Thunderous Charge deals light damage in a line and inflicts stun, but you can change direction. And it really reminds me of something like Volt Tackle from Pokemon, the way you can control the direction. The showcase will last a few days, I think about 3 days longer than the event itself, than the Resplendent Refrain rerun. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the trailer. So I'll show off some screenshots just so we can get a closer look at Yachiyo and at Norwin, since they weren't previewed in-game, only the 5 stars are. Despite the fact that the 4 stars can often be the most lucrative things to pull for, since they're a little bit easier to target in terms of the amount of resources you need. So as for Yachiyo, it looks like Blossom Flash deals damage and buffs her strength. It says in a note, the buff displayed here results from one of the adventurer's abilities. So it looks like maybe Blossom Flash actually doesn't buff her strength. Maybe she has an ability that buffs her strength whenever she uses a skill or something, which would actually be pretty crazy. But I'm not really sure what that would be like because you don't see that on her second skill, so hard to say. But then Peerless Heart activates and she gets Dauntless Spirit as a mode. It looks like her 4-strike duration or length is about the same. It's about normal for a blade, but there's a little bit of embellishment at the end, like a twirl, like a spin of some type, so maybe that's the enhancement. It's 1 to her 4 strikes. It also takes a lot of the enemy overdrive gauge down. However, this is a pretty weak enemy, we can assume, so, you know, that could just be the fact that she's so much stronger than this weak enemy. Now we see Norwin, and on Norwin as well, we get that note. The buff displayed here results from one of the adventurer's abilities. So on first watch, I thought Storybook Ending was a skill that both dealt damage and buffed his strength. On second thought, it's probably something to do with Norwin's abilities. I love Norwin's look. Absolutely cool. I feel like Shadow is a great element for husbandos. I mean, you have Heinwald, you have Current, you have Ieyasu. You know, what more do you need but Norwin? And Norwin looks so good. But Storybook Ending, Jump Shot, that ability buffs the strength, presumably. And then Tragic Farce deals damage in a line. It looks really similar to the third skill on the 5-star Shadow Bow. So both Norwin and Yachiyo look like they have a lot of potential. Light Blade just not being available so far makes that pretty good. Halloween Edward was the only other one, and it was limited. And as for Norwin, bows are still in a tough spot, but I think that 2 attacking skills is kind of what you want to start off with if you're a bow. Hopefully his kit with that strength buff, it'll be something that's pretty easy to consistently trigger. If that's the case, then he could have decent damage output. I'm not going to say it's going to be crazy just because the bow is not especially good at that, but at least you could use 4 responds on him for pretty good effect for a lot of skill damage, and we'll have to wait and see tomorrow what his full kit entails. So with the trailer talk out of the way, let's go ahead and hop over into the game and we'll start discussing Zardin as well as Takemikazuchi. Alright, so I've pulled up Dragalia Lost. Beauty in Motion is going to kick off at reset tonight. It doesn't mention that anything is limited here, so I think we can assume everything here will be part of the normal summoning pool. That being said, it doesn't show off the 4 stars here, so there is a small chance that some of them could be limited, but I definitely think that everything will be part of the normal summoning pool. That is going to be my assumption, and we'll know tomorrow for sure. Like I said, it lasts a bit longer than the Resplendent Refrain rerun. That lasts until the 24th in my time zone, and this is going to last until the 27th, so a little bit longer. As for Beautician Zardin, we see he does have a very good strength stat, being an attack type. Actually the lowest strength, though, of any of the natural 5-star blades. It's lower than Ieyasu and lower than Mikoto, but both of them are pretty monstrous as far as their strength. So Zardin has taken up a new job as a beautician, with the aim of bringing out the beauty in others. Far from altruistic, however, he hopes his efforts will serve to amplify his own beauty as well. Of course, true to Zardin, that is the case, but as for his skills, Ravishing Rainbow deals light damage to enemies directly ahead, reduces their strength and defense by 5%. We're going to have to wait and see what the percent chance of that is, but that's a pretty good effect, and increases the user's energy level by 1 stage. The rest of this text just explains how energy works. Every musical note you have is an energy level. Once you get 5, you are said to be energized, and then once you're energized, your next skill, whether it's an attack or heal, it'll basically be 50% more effective. It doesn't work for buffs, but attacking skills will deal 50% more damage, and heals will heal 50% more. So that's how Ravishing Rainbow works. Hopefully being the first skill on Zardin, it has a pretty quick cooldown, so he can utilize this fairly often, build up energy. And then Stunning Visage activates Stunning Beauty for 15 seconds and increases the user's energy level by 2 stages. So this also works with Ravishing Rainbow to build up energy over time. During Stunning Beauty, the user's normal attacks may inflict stun, and then it has the usual text about energy. So the downside to this would be if you're fighting a boss with stun resistance, and that's not uncommon because stun is one of the more powerful afflictions. Usually the endgame bosses can't be stunned. Then, this ability is less desirable, the ability to stun enemies with normal attacks. So then at that point, you're pretty much just getting the energy level boost out of this. So that would be a little bit bad if that's all it does, I think. But at least it's 2 stages, and then you could use that to power up Ravishing Rainbow later on. However, what may be unsaid here is if this actually increases the damage of normal attacks, and I think they would say it explicitly, given that it says they give the normal attacks the chance to inflict stun. It doesn't say anything about increasing the damage, but sometimes when they have those property-changing personal buffs, it will affect your damage output as well. So I'm not really sure on that, but if it does something like that, then that suddenly looks a lot better. If it's just the energy and the stun effect, then it's okay, and its strength will vary a lot depending on the boss or the enemies that you're facing off against. Of course, Zardin has the co-ability that goes up to 10% for strength, which is awesome. One of the best co-abilities in the game. You can always use more strength. You can always clear faster. At some point, you probably don't need a ton of HP or a ton of defense if you've gotten to a point where you're clearing things consistently, you're not taking a lot of excess hits. However, strength you can always use more of. Striker's Energy 3 increases energy level by 3 stages for every 3 enemies defeated with 4 strikes. Again, this is okay, but this is particularly suited for wave-based content. It doesn't mention a maximum number of times this can be done here, so have to wait and see on that. I don't really remember whether Dragalia Xander's had a maximum or not, but either way, how often are you going to be defeating enemies with 4 strikes against a harder boss? There's not a lot of random adds in these boss fights. There might be 3 to 10 maximum. In the case of High Mercury, there's a lot of rats, but you typically don't want to even fight those rats, and especially not just to energize one of your skills. So this is a pretty weak ability, and I would say Poison Res is okay as far as Zardin goes. If he had Curse Res, he would definitely be in consideration to use along someone like Lucretia for potentially High Zodiac in the future. Because he's a blade, he already is going to be pretty powerful just based off the strength co-ability, having an attacking skill, and so on. But Poison Res means he would need Heavenly Holiday to reach 100% Curse Res, so that could be costly. Spending a Wormprint slot on that could be costly. There's a chance, though, that with there being 2 blades on this showcase, maybe in our Wormprint shop, we get a new blade Wormprint. That would be kind of cool to see on him, and you never know, Curse might not be so bad that you actually need Heavenly Holiday in future content. So Poison Res, okay for Shadow IO, okay against the Void Manticore, okay against Obsidian Golem, but we don't know how good it'll be in High Dragon Trials just yet. HP 70% equals skill damage of 35%. That is very good. He only has 1 attacking skill in his kit, so just how good that is kind of depends on the cooldown on Ravishing Rainbow, how quickly you can spam that, but that does have a lot of potential. Having that amount of skill damage is very high. HP 70% equals skill damage of 35%. Poison Res and then this ability are very similar to what we see on Annalie, who's another light 5-star. She's a Lance who focuses on the energy mechanic. So right away, I think that Zardin would make a good teammate with Annalie. That's pretty much all I want to say about Zardin, though. I think his kit is a little bit gimmicky. It requires the energy mechanic to fully utilize. It gets at its best when enemies can be stunned. It also is at its best when there's multiple enemies to defeat with 4 strikes, so there are some things here that might be wasted depending on the content that you're bringing Zardin to. That's going to bring us to our 5-star dragon, though. Takemikazuchi, my lightning shall sunder the heavens and rend the earth in twain. A dragon revered in Hinamoto, the lightning surging from his body is recognized as a symbol of power by warriors across the land, especially famous for his grappling. He's said to be the founder of sumo. And Takemikazuchi is a real Japanese deity from mythology, so it's awesome that they actually implemented Takemikazuchi into the game. And indeed, in reality, he is said to have held one of the first sumo matches in history, so that's kind of cool. Thunderous Charge, we saw in the video, deals light damage to enemies in a line, but you can change direction, so it's more like a V-shape from what we saw in the video if you choose to change direction. And inflicts stun. Light strength of 40%. If the user is attuned to light, increases strength by 40%. Light overdrive punisher of 25%. If the user is attuned to light, increases damage to enemies in overdrive state by 25%. So I will say I think this is probably worse than Cupid. Cupid just gives you a flat 60% strength, and I'll give the same back of the envelope calculation I did for Submerg on this. My thinking is with Overdrive, you could sort of break down a match into 3 components: normal, overdrive, and break. I would say the normal part of the match lasts about 50%, overdrive maybe 40%, and break 10%. So when you consider that enemies are in overdrive only about 40% of the match, something like Overdrive Punisher looks a lot less desirable than just pure strength. And so the way this works out, if you add up the values of these based on the percentage of the match in which they to be applicable, you get something like 1.54. So like, I think you could kind of chalk this up to about a 54% flat strength buff throughout the match. The good thing about Overdrive Punisher is it's multiplicative with strength. So if this were just pure strength, then it's just one thing, it's just added together. However, ultimately it comes to 54% strength. Roughly, that's a back of the envelope calculation for sure. But basically, I think that means it's probably worse than Cupid. It's not horrible, but Light just has so many 5-star dragons now. We have Cupid, we have Gilgamesh, who provides 50% flat strength, as well as Shadow Res. We even have Jeanne d'Arc for HP. We have Lindworm, we have Liger. We have a ton of Light dragons. So I think for that reason, since this is a brand new dragon that people are going to have to decide whether to summon for or not, honestly, if you've already invested into one of those other projects, especially Cupid, I would say pretty easy skip on Takemikazuchi. I don't think it's one that you want to invest your Sunlight Stones in, just because there is that flat power that you get from Cupid that's going to be a little better, I think, and Cupid also has a very good skill, that healing and critical rate buff. It's so good in a variety of contents. We've seen how important it was on defensive battles where it was excellent. So yeah, I kind of think Takemikazuchi isn't the best Light Dragon, but of course, that kind of remains to be seen. Maybe that stun will be relevant. In some cases, perhaps Overdrive will last a lot longer than in others. That Void Manticore certainly comes to mind. If you're not running a Fury Penetrator weapon, it's going to be an Overdrive the entire rest of the match once it enters it, so that is a context where Takemikazuchi would definitely be better than Cupid, but just for that one fight, I can't really see myself wanting to pull for him or invest heavily into him. Because my War Might is so low, I will probably skip, but I am going to be doing a review of this showcase. We'll also take a look at Resplendent Refrain starting tomorrow and in the days to come, as we did hear that there is going to be a new difficulty. So I am definitely looking forward to checking that out and just seeing how they do reruns, since this is really going to be our very first one. Other than that, I guess one last thing I'll mention as for Zardin and for Takemikazuchi, you see that they both inflict stun, and so that's kind of a theme with this showcase. It is a powerful effect, and there are some light weapons that emphasize stun, so if this is something they continue to develop, maybe there's some merit to looking at those weapons, but generally speaking, I think the natural 5 stars are just better, the elemental 5 stars that have a skill and not an ability. But I'll just show you in this Blade Wing tree, we do have this stunned Punisher Primal Thunder, which is cheaper to craft than a normal 5 star, since this is a Void 5 star. You just need to beat Void Zephyr to be able to craft it. The normal one actually has a healing skill, Heaven Wing, which is okay for Zardin because he wants to stay above 70% HP, so he gets more skill damage. And you could also energize this heal and have it heal for a lot. But yeah, that's the one last thing I want to say is maybe this stun theme in Light will continue to get developed. I sort of can't believe that we have another Light banner just because we have so many, but at least we get a shadow character at 4-star. That's kind of refreshing to see. I would love to get either Yachiyo or Norwin, but like I said, I think it's going to be a skip for me. Let me know what you're thinking about the showcase in the comments below. Otherwise, everyone, I will see you in the next couple days with my showcase review, with some coverage of the event, and of course, more adventure spotlights and guides as I am able to crank them out. Thank you so much for watching once again. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.